That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit.
I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Barbell Me Search. I'm not doing episode numbers, so I don't know what the fuck episode this is, but we have Paul Oneid and Jay. It's Jay Nera, correct?
Yeah,
I got it right. First crack at it. And did I get
Nera,
your
Nera, both.
Nera. It's like my last name. It's like Guido. Like I don't like whatever you say. So you guys both. So for anyone listening, they're both owners and I would say operators. I don't know, CEOs, CFOs. You're like all the things for Metrilife, which is, I'll let you guys explain that. But we're bringing them on because we're going to talk probably auto-regulation and lifting and like high levels of performance and why tracking some variables are going to help the top end of strength, but also how does that apply holistically with mental health and then paying off in life, but in performance. But Paul was on our other podcast, or my other podcast called The Fitness Devil, but I'll get you to reintroduce yourself and then Jay will do the same thing and then we can just hash it out. Work for me?
Sure. I'm Paul Oneid. I am co-founder with Jay of Life Inc. and the Metrilife App. Outside of that role, I work as a functional rehabilitation specialist and competed in powerlifting for the last 11 years. Done some pretty cool stuff there, but now Metrilife is kind of the next step for me.
Man, like don't just tell them how much you squatted. Like what? Why did you say like, oh, I just power lifted? Like you were pretty
so I've totaled 1960 unequipped and squatted over 800 like 11 times.
Jesus.
Yeah. And at one point, I always like to brag about Paul. At one point, you were like a top 3 squatter, top 5, top 6. Like you're not.
No, I was top. I had a top 10 squat. And I had 2 top 20, a top 20 total in 2 different weight classes.
Yeah, and now you're not even.
Jay talks about lifting.
Well, he's not even on the list anymore. Like his 800-pound squat is like so shitty now.
Well, what, 242 or 220 or both?
My totals were I had a top 20 at 220 and then a top 20 at 242.
Yeah, because those weight classes have just gone out of control.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Jay, you can lead with your total. I think that would be the most natural thing to do because Paul totally is trying to like play the cool card, but like I want you to start there.
Well, actually, 1960 is greater than my best total. I think my best total is 1923 or 27, but mine's in sleeves, not in knee wraps, so that needs to be said.
Whoa!
My best competition lifts are 733, 744 deadlift. Sorry, 733 squat, 744 deadlift, and a 484 bench. I don't really care if they're in competition or not. I'll always talk about my 780 deadlift and my 505 bench because I did do them.
I told Paul I lift 745. He's like, yeah, you're basement. And like, I don't even know if you locked it out. Maybe you don't say that. Maybe everyone just says that. But I'm like, yeah, it counts.
My wife even said, why doesn't Dean lock out his deadlifts?
I always have, so this, Jay, the reason why I want you to tell people what your totals and Paul is because like, and why I always mention my deadlift is because I want the world to like distinguish between fit pros and fit bros. And that you can still be smart and be lifting heavy, but like lifting heavy is way cooler than like being a smart fitness person. It gives you street cred. That's why it's always good to start.
So you can lift heavy. You're kind of like 50 Cent. You've been shot a few times, but you're still walking.
Yeah, that should be the name of this podcast for sure. And then like, what else do you do? I know you there's more than meets the eye.
Yeah, so I used to powerlift. I haven't competed in, I think, 4 years now, at least 3 years. And I own a gym, CrossFit O-Town and Dynamo Barbell, so a CrossFit gym and a powerlifting gym. I think we've had, if you count Craig's recent one, we've had 8 500 Wilks now out of that gym, which is pretty cool. And then, so we also have a CrossFit gym, and then I have a book that I put out. It's a journaling book, and I have Metrilife. Here's a journaling book, systems journaling. Kind of touches base with the app. We'll talk about that later. But but yeah, pretty much everything that I'm trying to do right now and that Paul and I are trying to do with Metrilife is just kind of help guide people to make their own decisions and take accountability for themselves.
Well, that's why we wanted to bring you on, because it's not like it's cool to talk about totals and all this stuff, and then we go like, oh, these guys creating an app, and I don't want to all be about that, because I think we're going to talk about stuff that kind of filters into why it works. But I kind of wanted to dive a little, like, so if we use the lens, like there's tons of lenses you can throw on this thing, but the avatar of someone that's listening to this is going to be a strength coach or strength and conditioning coach or someone who likes to be strong. And through that lens, kind of create something for them. So maybe that starts off to like the greater question of like, in terms of your backgrounds, like what was the reason? Well, I guess maybe start by explaining what Metrilife is, and then kind of using that lens, why the hell did you make it? Because like you guys are two strong powerlifters and you're making a mental fitness app, which like it wouldn't seem like two worlds that would collide, but it seems to be something that you think is helpful for that community. I don't know who.
Well, it absolutely collides though, because it's necessary. I mean, more precision is going to lead to better decisions. So like, so one thing I didn't mention is I used to be a member of the national bobsled team. And when I was training for that, I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anyone helping me kind of periodize my training back then, 2005. And I was using the periodization book by Tudor Bompa. And in that book, there, page 144, there's a big tracking sheet. And it's like tracking your sleep, your like hours of sleep, quality of sleep, appetite, competitive willingness, muscle soreness, etc. So I used that, and it helped me decide how to train. So I used it to auto-regulate my training. And then years later, I'm a personal trainer, and I started using this, getting some of my athletes to use it. As a personal trainer at a Good Life, which is just like a typical global gym, but I was lucky enough to get a few athletes to train, and I had them using that, and they really liked it. And then I gave it to a couple of my regular clients, and they started using it. And what I noticed with them is athletes in the regular population, like there's a huge variance in intrinsic motivation, right? Athletes always know, like you ask an athlete, if I get more sleep, will I perform better? Yeah, they know. Eating better? Yeah, they know, etc. But your gen pop, they don't like, dude, I've had people like, Paul, how many people have you had say they eat healthy and then they put like fruit to go as a fruit?
Oh, reading initial diet, like when I do diet coaching, the initial intake forms are hilarious.
But yeah, like what people's conceptions of healthy are just completely skewed. So you get people doing this, and then they start realizing, oh, it's like, 2 months later, Jay, when I get 7 hours of sleep instead of 6, I feel way better. Really? That's a great revelation.
Jeb and I call that inception.
Yeah.
You would need to inception them, so that's their idea, because they won't listen to you, even though they should.
Yeah. Well, no, you're saying it exactly that though. And the thing is, like, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? You know what I'm saying? It's the exact same thing. We can tell people how much they need to sleep, how they need to eat, and people can, and even with all of these things, people can look at them all on a micro level. So sleep, okay, how am I sleeping? Diet, how is my diet? How am I eating? Exercise. Oh yeah, I should meditate. I know everyone knows that they should do these things, but no one is really looking at them also on a macro level, at how they all interplay together and their interconnectedness. And that's another piece that we're trying to show them. So in an effort to get the horse to drink the water, let's get people tracking these things, because the act of tracking alone is going to bring awareness to it. And people looking at these things and tracking them over time and seeing the relationships is going to give them the associations to help them want to drink the water, right? So people will see, wow, my performance is going to get better when I do X, Y, Z.
And the messed up thing is, like, I've used the app, and like I use the app, and you don't actually tell them anything. Like, you just, this is the cool part, is like, you're not actually, they come to their own conclusions, because it's not like you need to track sleep. I know they have those metrics, but it's like, you're just asking them questions, and like they're rating a scale, and then it tells them how much they suck or don't suck at it, which is then they start asking themselves, like, well, why does this suck? Or why is this good? So I don't know. I like that aspect of it because I like the inception thing. I don't know if Jeb has anything to add or Paul, but inception always.
I'm just trying to get a handle of exactly. So the structure is they have this app. It's going to track lifestyle metrics, performance metrics as well, or is this solely focused on?
Yes. So the app has, the base of the app is the wellness pack, which is 10 questions that are valuable to all people at all times. So that's what Jay was alluding to, with the length of sleep, quality of sleep, appetite, sex drive, perceived stress, things of that nature. And in answering those questions, and then there are other packages of questions pertaining to different subject matters. So there's a mental health score as well, so you can track your mental health on a kind of long-term basis. Stress, pre-workout readiness, RPE of training cardiovascular, RPE of training resistance training. There's a pain management pack that Kabuki Strength helped us develop. There's going to be a meditation pack as well, and a nutrition one specific that was designed by one of our brand ambassadors that is coming in. So we're always adding to the app and adding to the metrics that people can track. And the premise is, and we spoke about this briefly before, is what doesn't get measured can't be managed, and what doesn't get managed can't be manipulated. So in tracking these metrics over time, you're allowing yourself to find associations between them that might be related to your outcomes. And we know that to have a positive behavior change, you need to understand the why. So the premise of our app is not to provide blanket recommendations. We're not a Whoop band telling you to sleep 14 hours a day because your strain score was super high. We are providing reminders and recommendations to dive deeper and to gain a more nuanced understanding of your particular response to your lifestyle. When we look at your organism as a whole, the person as a whole, and all the stressors that are being placed upon it, whether it be training, work, family, relationships, these will all affect each and every one of us differently. And it's important that we gain an understanding of how we respond so that we can manipulate those variables to get the outcomes that we want. So if you're not progressing in your training, but you know that you're putting 100% effort there, it's not the 2 hours you're spending in the gym, it's the 22 hours you're spending outside the gym that's impacting it. So when Jay said our goal is to get people to take more accountability and live more consciously within their life, we feel that we've developed a tool that will allow them to do so with the most amount of data and most informed decision-making possible.
Well, and a little bit of background on Jeb and I is like we both work for a company called Strong U, but we deal with like, I wouldn't say hundreds of nutrition people, but a lot of the basis of what we do, and Jeb can maybe explain this, but like motivational interviewing tends to be a foundational layer that we try to use in our practice. And the cool thing about yours is you're kind of doing that. Like you're making them come up with their own answers. Cause I know like you have your flags and recommendations, but we've always alluded to the fact that a lot of our clients are going to be better experts in their own fucking life than I can tell them. Like I'm 32-year-old meathead that lives in my basement and like likes the deadlift. So like my recommendation is, yeah, you just fucking increase your volume and track your macros. But that's not always going to be the hammer that works. Like I don't want people to be like me, but when they track those other things, then they can start to kind of come up with their own solutions, which is cool because we deal with that in the nutrition space, but we deal with that with nutrition. We try to layer that on where you're attacking that on you're attacking that on the basis in which we have to do through interviewing. You don't need that person. The app almost has that built-in process, which is cool. I don't know if Jeb had anything to add. I just told everyone what Jeb does. I don't know if that's true. I just made up for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much the whole idea of behavior change. I mean, that's really what we're shooting for in all of these coaching scenarios, right? It's utilizing whatever tools at our disposal to affect behavior change, and I think I like the way that you guys kind of described that of having these metrics to allow people to come to their own conclusions on whether or not they are succeeding in all these different areas that'll help them. Because again, telling someone, you can't tell someone they're doing something poorly. Nobody's going to be forced into change from external regulation. And so by giving them those tools, you're creating ownership over the process, which I think is perfect.
Yeah, essentially the goal for sure.
Well, and so I guess let's talk about this, because like I mean, I trust in the product, and like I love Paul and Jay. I just met you, but like we could talk about Metrilife being the sickest thing all day, but at the end of the day, the like how the fuck is this going to help performance? Because like I said, you've mentioned how those two worlds can collide and become this, but I would say that the outward look at it is that people don't actually make that connection. So I guess let's just talk about, I don't know how we want to scaffold this, but at least at the beginning, why does this shit matter for performance? And I know you kind of touched on it, but like if we look at it through the lens of like hypertrophy or powerlifting, it's like a lot of those people will be like, I just need to work harder and follow this fucking program and like just get my technique down. Like fuck this other stuff, especially when you're mid-20s, 30s, and European supplements and all that stuff. There could be a better way is kind of what you guys are saying.
Yeah, like to look, like you talk about particularly like diet and training or programming. So people are looking at calories coming in and volume and intensity of training. And obviously those are like the huge rocks. Those are huge things that we have to take care of when we're thinking about maximizing performance. But we don't live in vacuums. There's so many different things. Like every single one of us has a different amount of stressors on our lives. We didn't all get 7 hours of sleep for the last 4 nights. You know, some of us might be averaging 6, 6.5, 7.5, 9. And that would greatly impact how we're going to train. It's greatly going to impact how we take on stress for the rest of the day. It's going to impact our diets. It's going to impact our cravings. It's going to impact so many different things. So if we're not taking all of these different things in accountability and looking at them over time, then we don't know. And I think that is something that a lot of people who are more experienced kind of do it intuitively, even in their subconscious. They don't even necessarily, like when I go to train, like I'm training in my garage right now. I'm fortunate I had a gym and a truck, so I could just bring everything into my garage, and I have a pretty sick setup. But when I walk in there, I have a plan of what I'm going to do, but I don't always I usually like to do around 16 hardworking sets. And I don't do 16 sets every day. I usually end up doing 12 to 14, depending on how stressed out I am, because I start losing a little bit of steam around the 10th set. And I think, you know what, I'll do 2 light sets and I'm done. It's a little bit of an auto-regulation. But on days when I got a lot of sleep and my son didn't tire me out all day, I'll do a little bit more. And so I make up for those sets, right? And that's my own little subconscious kind of auto-regulation that I do. And we all do different things. But we can't be more specific and more perfect doing our exact program unless everything else actually is controlled. So in that, because everything else can't ever be perfectly controlled, it's good to have some sort of system to help you navigate through all the variables.
Well, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Can I'm just going to take that a step further too, because Jay just highlighted something that is extremely important to recognize. He's been training since he was 12 years old, or not 9 years old. Jay, he started doing push-ups in the basement, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So he knows his body, he knows how he's feeling, and he is accountable enough within himself to make those decisions. Take myself. I am, when it comes to training, if left to my own devices, I won't make those decisions, and which is why I've been injured for the last 6 years. I will push and I will write down, I will do exactly what's written on the paper no matter what. So why do we hire coaches? Well, we hire coaches for someone to be accountable to. So if I know if I have to eat X number of macros because I'm checking in with Dean later this week. With Metrilife, or with tracking in general, it provides you more data points to put it in front of you to say, hey, last time you were feeling this way, you had a poor training session. So I'm letting you know that you're following that same trajectory and you're probably going to have a bad training session. So it might be time to pull back. So it is providing you the data to make those decisions yourself from an objective standpoint, rather than from a emotional standpoint of just, I'm just going to get this done. Because most people, when they go to the gym, they want to kill, like if they're super stressed, I know for me anyway, if I'm super stressed, I want to kill myself in the gym. But that's literally the opposite thing I need to be doing if getting a positive training stimulus is the goal, right? So the more data I have to make those decisions, and the more data I have to make that association between stress or sleep or diet or X, Y, and Z with that training, I'm making more educated decisions at that point.
Well, I think even from a coaching standpoint, like Gemini, I keep saying Gemini, but like what I like, so you guys have red flags that pop up. Cool. Like it's like, oh, here's a red flag. Maybe think about it. But like when we go through our spreadsheet, so like again, we track sleep and what else we track. We track a bunch of stuff. Anyways, like I just look for red flags. Like how many meals out did they have that week? And like, boom, this thing wasn't like your last week. And I think that if you can come to, again, making those correlations, then you can start building auto-regulation, because it's kind of like if you're not funneling information into that, how the fuck are you going to auto-regulate? Especially like Jay's been doing this forever, but there's a lot of people that are young and training age and are super strong, but they don't have the experience to auto-regulate, and there's no information coming in on what that is to auto-regulate, because like you said, there's a lot of people that'll go to the gym and like they're going to follow their program and they're going to hit it, and last week would have been an RP8, this week it's an RP10, and then the next day it could be an RP7, and like there's nothing to kind of track that other shit. It tends to, I don't know, in my experience, correlate with the life stuff. Like you got in a fight with your girlfriend, you got no sleep, I'm going to go hammer deadlifts, but maybe that's not the best thing the next day. And so I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, like I mean, oh, sorry, Jeb. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, you know, what I was looking to here is like, it's giving, again, I think it's giving a like you said, objective view to people that are going to emotionally charged going into these things, because what I see is the biggest problem with especially people that either are balls to the wall like Paul, or people that are less experienced is either they're going to way overdo it, or less experienced people are going to way underdo it. They don't understand their RPE. They don't understand what those things are. And so by saying to them like, hey, lay off or take it up a notch is actually pretty good for those people, because I think they're the ones that have the worst perception of what reality is. So I think that aspect alone, you know, taking someone who's, like you said, highly stressed in a sympathetic state, throwing them in and then being like, all right, this is your heavy, you know, high volume day, crush it. It's just setting people up for injury, for, you know, further fatigue, further, you know, sleep issues. And it's a, you know, negative feedback loop.
Well, a good example, and we have a mutual friend, Stuart. Paul, you coach Stu, but he was like, he messaged me. So like, I like to send him my deadlifts because it's kind of funny. He was getting jacked up. He's like, you need to go up. That was so fast. You need to lift 700 today. I'm like, no, fuck off. Like, I'm going to like, take it easy. Literally 2 days later, he's like, I got an email from Paul or whatever. Paul says I have to take it easy. I'm like, yeah, because you clearly just want to like hit the hammer as hard as possible. And he's probably pulling you back. It's probably good advice, because we can kind of all get in that mode. It was just hilarious, because like that's the kind of stuff you're talking about. Because as a coach, you can kind of manage that, and you kind of know it's not always cool to dig into the well. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's actually what happened with Stu, but it's kind of funny, because this was literally like 2 days ago, and I wasn't surprised, because if he's amped up for me to lift heavy, I'm like, he clearly just wants to like rip 800 off the floor right now. There's quad off again. Is that what you're thinking? Oh, Paul stalled.
No, Stu's an idiot.
Are you asking me?
No, I was going to ask Paul.
He's his own worst enemy. No, you go ahead, Jim.
Now everyone's stalled. Is that just me? Oh my God. Okay, we're back.
Yeah, it's
No, I'm here.
a little bit.
Okay, maybe that's.
Sorry.
It says my internet.
Okay, so I wanted to get into something for a second though, because can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're good. We're back.
Yep.
You're good.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, so that whole conversation we just had was looking at pretty much programming as the controllable variable. And what I'm kind of hoping that people can see with usage of the app is that other variables are controllable. So it's not just control your training. How should we be changing our training? It's what if you're Paul and you're no matter what going to do everything that's on that sheet. No matter what, I am sticking to my program. It's going to keep getting harder and heavier as the intensity goes up going into this competition. So now how do I have to make sure, what do I have to do to make sure that I can hit these numbers I'm supposed to hit? So now let's look at all these other things. These other variables are also controllable. You know what? I'm not going to stay up until 1 a.m. watching Netflix. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to try and maintain my circadian rhythm, right? So I am going to eat a little bit better. I'll eat better food. I'm going to practice some breathing. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to mobilize. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to stretch, right? What are all of these different things? I'm going to reach out to a loved one that I'm holding negative energy to, and I'm going to apologize to them, right? Whatever it is, reducing stress, all of these things, they're all part of one large aggregate. So we're hoping with using Metrilife that people also begin to realize that all of these other variables are in fact controllable. So autoregulation isn't just about regulating your training. You know, it's not just about adding 250 more calories for the next 2 weeks while I add volume to my training. It's like, you want to put on size, maybe try getting an extra half an hour of sleep. Let's start with something small, 30 more minutes. Can you do it? That'll be a lot better for most people's hormones, right? So it's trying to get people to see, like, you know, this big symphony that is going on with all these different variables other than just weights and what you're putting on your plate.
And especially because, like, we're dealing with, like, we're talking about a high performance level person, but like the people who are listening, we can kind of assume that training variables are going to be under control. But I like how you put that, because like even some of the questions it'll ask, like, how hopeful are you today, or like, what's your outlook on life, and then it'll give you a flag. But it could be as simple, like you said, of like calling your friends like daily, and that might give you the capacity to get your training up. And I just don't find that those connections get made unless you're made aware of it. And even saying like that, like, we can get into a talk about deadlifts and Stu and Paul's programming, blah, 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 blah. But then you're right, that got me off track of the point of like, that's what the other stuff is. And I think that that's a lot of the correlations that people aren't making. And when you say it like that, it's so nice.
So we've given the information, right? Okay, so here the information is, okay, go, you need to get, if you get better sleep, you'll probably, this is a variable we control. Now, how do we drive adherence?
So adherence has been something that we focused on a lot, because in order for you to get the most out of the app, you're going to need to use it every day. So there is an alert built in every day to alert you to say, hey, you haven't input your metrics yet today. The other thing that we did is we've put in functions within the app to entice you to want to go into it multiple times. So the way I use it as an example is, in the morning, there's journaling functions that I can do. So I do a gratitude journal, I do a goals journal, and then Jay's book, Assist Stems Journaling, is actually in the app as well. So he'll give a sentence stem, and you do the stem journaling with that. The premise there for me is, after outlining what I'm grateful for, after outlining my goals, and after doing the stem journaling, I'm in a much more positive headspace, and my intent is set for the day in a more positive manner. Then as I go through the day, I'm able to track activities. So every time I have a coffee or go for a walk, or maybe do some prehab work, or if I take a moment to read during the day, I'll put that in the app. And then at the end of the day, I'll put in my metrics for the day. I'm answering a few different packs right now, so I'll do my wellness, mental health, and then I do the stress, productivity, and all the training metrics. From there, if I do get alerts, I'll look at them. I'll see what they were. If it entices me to look a little bit further, I might. But I use that as a brain dump before I go to bed to kind of say, here's my day. This is done. It's off to the side, and then I can go to bed. So through the different functions in the app, it entices you to want to use it more often. And as far as adherence in the long term, as you get these alerts and as you start to dive deeper, you're going to want to manipulate the variables. And then you're going to want to see how that variable manipulation leads to different outcomes and leads to different alerts being set off. So we purposefully didn't gamify the app. We didn't make it like, oh, 5 stars, you entered 3 days in a row, because we want it to be self-directed. We want to entice you to take that control. And that first step is awareness, as we've spoken about. So awareness of these metrics and how they're affecting your life. Then it's taking the recommendations to dive further and understand it, and then move that forward.
You also have visuals. Like I know,
oh yeah,
I don't want to undersell that, but like that, it's not a gamifying thing. But like when you have like the points aren't going as high, you're like, damn, like I need, but like I think that's helpful.
Well, that was Jay's idea of the different graphical displays. Like they look awesome in the app, and I mean, Jay can speak to that, like how it helps you make those associations a little bit easier for sure.
Well, let's actually, Jeff.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, out of all the different like graphs that we use, the one that I think is the most valuable, you'd probably agree as well, Paul, is incremental improvements statistics that people can see. Because then people can see like you have your day, your week, your month, and then your long term. And people can see so like, let's say my average sleep was 6 hours. And then over around the 4 weeks, like the midterm, over that it was 6.5. So I can see a slight couple points increase. And now I want to try and improve that still. So I can look at my week and I want to try and improve it. So let's see if we can get it a little bit higher. And then now let's look at my day and what I got. So people can constantly look at all the different variables and try to make them all a little bit more, a little improve on them each a little bit more. I find with the mental health, especially that one really gives people goals and areas of their mental health to focus on.
Well, and this is something maybe I want Jeb to kind of highlight, but Paul, one thing you said was like, you didn't want to make it a game. And like Jeb and I have had talks about this personally and privately about how this gamifying thing, like, although it works for, I want to say it gets people doing things, and it can make a lot of money, and it's why all the Facebook apps and fucking Farmville blew up and all those things. But I'm not convinced that it's actually going to make like lasting change. I don't know, Jeb, you have anything to add on it? Because I know you're pretty fired up before about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so we know that external motivation is a legitimate form of motivation, and it works in small doses, and that's what these things are. Now, I think like the Facebook, Instagram version of gamifying things is extraordinarily effective because it creates a basically dopaminergic loop that gets you chasing something over and over again. I just think it's more damaging than it is helpful. So if you're trying to have a wellness app, I could see that keeping that out of there is probably a benefit, because again, if you're trying to move someone into that kind of internal regulation of doing something, for the sake of doing it, chasing a dopamine hit is probably not the best way to go about it. And I think that what you're doing is you're building self-efficacy and autonomy and all the things that, like, within self-determination theory, like push motivation. I think that is probably a pretty viable concern to try to the gamification. I think that's an interesting thing that most people probably haven't really considered.
Yeah, that's a great. Sorry, I was just going to say that's a great point, because like we're always talking about it. It's about getting people to live more consciously about things, and dopamine is a subconscious actor, right? So as long as people are acting on dopamine, they're acting in a subconscious way, and that's precisely what we're trying to avoid.
And we know that dopamine, it makes us feel good in the short term, but we get desensitized to it very quickly. So, that alcoholic who gets a dopamine rush from getting drunk needs more and more alcohol to continue to get drunk. Just like with, with like getting stars or getting rewards, it's cool for a while, but then it dies off. And this was highlighted in a study that the University of Pittsburgh did. Is they had a health coach and they had a Fitbit, and they compared the weight loss between both groups. And both groups had the same kind of exercise prescription, but the adherence with the health coach was much higher. And the results were people lost twice as much weight with the health coach as they did with the Fitbit. Because with the health coach, they were learning why they were doing the activities and they wanted to continue because of the actual act. They developed intrinsic motivation based on the association between the activities and their weight loss. Whereas with the Fitbit, they were just getting rewarded for taking steps. That's the type of adherence that we want to get out of our users. It's not, don't do this because it gives you 5 stars. Do this because it makes you happier in the long term. And that's where those incremental improvement graphics really show that. It's like, you are making progress. It's here on the graph. You can see it. Now keep going.
Well, and that's interesting too, to have the mental health aspect and these other metrics, because if they get into this second tier and have the mental health, and they can see a corollary between their physical health and their mental health improvements, like all of a sudden those things don't seem so distanced.
Well, they're really not.
They're not at all. No, absolutely not.
Well, it's just interesting that you guys went that way. Like, and it's, I think it's admirable, but it's one of those things where like you're taking the harder road, because a lot of apps do go that gamifying method, and you know what I mean? And it's interesting because we know that like it's not going to be helpful the way this is, and it's hard to. It's like with the counting your calories and like doing volume. It just, you're selling non-sexy to people, and you want to fucking shove it down their throat because it's going to work, and it's hard.
That's about being true to the mission of our company. Like Jay and I started this app to help people, and that's been true every step of the way. Like we put this in because we wanted to help people. That's why when the coronavirus came along and people were financially burdened, the first response we had between the two of us was, how do we make this free? Right? Because we want it in people's hands. Like something like Metrilife during this time is a humongous help to people who are otherwise left to their own devices. So why wouldn't we try to make it free and get it in more people's hands? Like that costs us money, but it helps people. And that's been the entire way with this is, if we make money through helping people, that's great, but our primary driver is the mission to help people live more consciously, like live healthier, happier, and stronger. That's what we're trying to do, right? And, start with why, I guess, is like the cliche term right now, but we have a very clear why, and that's where we're going with it.
Well, that's why you're here. Like, again, it's not to sell the app. Like, obviously I want people to get on board, but it's because I know where it's coming from. And Jeb and I deal with this like all the time with people in like terms of how we do it. We have to do it non-sexy because I know it fucking works, but like it's always the harder path, and it's so easy to do the other thing. But like, is that really helping people? And my whole goal in life isn't to help people. Like it's to kind of build my career and do all this, but it's nice to help people. And it's nice to do it in a way in which they can then help themselves. And I think that's the big thing is like, I think you can reach more people once you kind of build an army of individuals who are self-sufficient and then don't need you. Like, it just kind of does that. Like, it ends up building them up to not need it. But I think that's a good thing.
I think something like this, though, is kind of nice because even if you don't need it, it still is extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah.
Like you don't age out of this.
Well, no, you don't. And I can speak to that because I've kind of gone through a few cycles of when I've quote unquote needed it and not needed it. I treat it like counting macros. There are periods I go through where I don't count my macros and I eat more intuitively, but I'm only able to do that because of what I've learned through tracking my macros. And then and then I'll come back to it and say, okay, I need to revisit this. I need to get back on track, quote unquote. I'll revisit it for a couple months. Then I'll try and do it more intuitively, see how it goes. And it's always that touch point to come back to and regain that awareness and reform those associations when they drop off. So it's really not something that you grow out of, and it adjusts with you as you go, because as your trajectories change, as your stressors change, your goals change, your inputs change, and the app changes with you and adjusts your course.
Well, and maybe this is a way to go, at least initially, is because a lot of the knock, and I'll just use macro tracking, a lot of the macro tracking negatives is that it's not good for people who like get super obsessive about things. And there is like a negative downfall of people relying on it, because what happens if your cell phone breaks or whatever, and then people go crazy. I don't know if I necessarily see that with this, but have you ever looked into, I guess, the negatives of tracking and seeing this other stuff? And like, is there a person this isn't for? I kind of know where you're going to go with it, but like, it'd be interesting to see your take on it, because I'm sure you look down that road. I know who wants to field that.
Do you want to hit that first?
I was waiting for you to talk about orthosomnia.
No.
What's orthosomnia? I can't even say it.
It's just like people who are like you have your Fitbit and it tells you how many hours of sleep you got, right?
Yeah.
So then people start looking at their sleeping trackers and they start obsessing about it so much that they start losing sleep. And the reason that they are suffering from insomnia is because they are so crazy about getting their sleep tracking perfect, right? So
it's a clinical diagnosis now.
Yeah.
It is a clinical diagnosis.
Well, that's why
It's a clinical diagnosis now.
Because like, I don't think I see that just because I know the way it's like built out. But like, how do you tack that with your thing? Because like, let's just say someone gets obsessive about being hopeful or whatever. Like, there's sex drive. Like, oh, I need to get my sex drive up, and then they think about sex all. I don't know. Like, did you ever think about that?
I actually had a question from someone on Instagram, which is an interesting place. Anyway, posted a story with some negative feedback and a meme about Metrilife. And so old me would have been just jumped down this guy's throat and whatever. And I simply replied, I'm like, hey, I was wondering what your gripe is with this company. Why didn't you tag them? And he responded, well, I didn't care to. And I was like, okay, well, it's my company, and I'd love it if you had some constructive feedback. And his constructive feedback was actually relatively intelligent. He was like, I don't like tracking because it could cause a nocebo effect. So if anyone's not familiar with what a nocebo effect is, by being more aware of something, it shapes your perception of what's going to happen. So he's like, if I feel shitty and then your app tells me I feel shitty, I'm more likely to have a shitty training session. But by that definition, then you should just fly by the seat of your pants all the time and have no direction outside of a piece of paper. So I replied back, I was like, you know what? That is possible, and there's nothing to stop somebody from having that reaction. Just like there's nothing that stops someone from looking at their HRV score and saying, I feel really shitty today when my HRV is good, so I guess I'm going to have a good day, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. These are all, whenever you are more aware, your perceptions shift. But what we've done, and what I feel is the most appropriate way to go about things, is to think critically. The reminders and recommendations that we provide people are not recommendations towards specific action. Our app will not tell you, hey, you need to take 6 sets off of your training today. It will say your wellness and your training intensity are both trending together towards a negative outcome. You should look into this further. Here are some strategies to address it. Here's how they work together. Do you want to dive further? Press a button. In no way are we trying to shape people's perceptions. We're trying to get them to look deeper. So that nocebo approach, or that nocebo effect, is not necessarily blunted, but it is adjusted for. Whenever you're more aware of something, your perceptions will change. Yeah. And how that changes over time is important, that you have the most data available to make those educated decisions.
Well, and I was going to say the solution for a lot of this stuff tends to be education, because like you mentioned HRV, and like that's a big thing where everyone kind of got on board and like, if my HRV is low, I'm going to have a bad day. And they're just not educated on parasympathetic and sympathetic. Like if there's a lot of stresses going on, like let's say preparing for a powerlifting meet, your HRV is going to drop and you're going to be more sympathetic, and that's a good thing. But if you just follow it as good and bad, and it's that simple, and it's kind of why we created this podcast, is putting context to myopic topics. Like it's not as simple as it says. And I think education is the key. And what you're saying is education is built right into it. And then you can do whatever the fuck you want to do based on that recommendation.
Yeah. One of the things that bothers me with HRV, like apps and softwares, is like your allostatic load is going to be calculated based on numerous variables. So they take your HRV and they shoot it at you, however they decide to formulate it with all those different variables. And then they make prescriptions. Mm-hmm. But those prescriptions are always based on only one or two variables. So if we take, like, say, a whoop band, it's like, blah, 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 your HRV is X, go to bed at 10 p.m., get up at 10 a.m. It's like, so your prescription is for me to get 12 hours of sleep. That's your prescription. It's not to reduce stress, maybe to eat a little bit better, maybe go for a walk, like it's just solely like maybe don't train hard and get an unrealistic amount of sleep, right? So with Paul's and with the app, what we're saying is like, it's like we're actually just trying to get people to look at the big picture a little bit more. So this guy, he says, oh, the nocebo effect. Well, it's like, well, how about you stop for a second to think, why am I feeling like shit? Stop focusing and blaming the app. Oh, I just did this and it says I feel like shit. It's giving me this low mental health score. My mental health score is low, so I'm going to have a shitty day. It's like, come on, man. What kind of attitude is that? That's a pretty loser attitude, and you need to fix that. And the app is supposed to be helping you fix that by looking at it and saying, well, why am I feeling like shit? Maybe I'll go into the stress pack, and I'll look at all my different areas of stress. Where is my stress coming from? Is it physical stress? Is it familial stress? Is it career stress? Is it my partner's stress? Where is this stress coming from? And just by answering these questions, like, oh, yeah, I feel like shit because my girlfriend dumped me because I couldn't figure this out, and I was blaming the app for making me feel like shit 5 minutes ago, right? So I think that the main thing is people using the app have more resources to help them figure out what variables are affecting them and how they can move forward, right? People like this, I totally forgot about that. But like, that's the exact attitude that it's like, you know what, man, you just want an excuse to feel like shit. This app could be 100% perfect. And you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, you know what? I want to be a piece of shit. I want to feel like a piece of shit. I'm going to treat myself like shit. I am not going to do what I need to do to make my life better. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people like that. And we can't help them. We can only try to help them. And those are the people that we're trying to bring to the water, right? But we can't make them drink it. But I mean, like, people out there listening, like, if you're always upset about something and you aren't trying to figure out why you're upset and you're just pissed off at the world, it's like, that's exactly what not to do. Like, you could go talk to someone, you could seek a therapist, great idea, because maybe you need help offloading, getting some stuff out of your brain that can get you thinking more productive things. Or maybe you just need to have a fucking magnifying glass and look at all these different variables in your life and actually think about them. But if you don't take the time to think about them, which simply answering some questions does, then you're not going to have the awareness and you're not going to be able to live consciously about it. And I forgot about that. That pisses me off.
It's a great soundbite.
Yeah,
I feel like
I'm like,
I feel like you should record the beginning of that and put it in the app. Like if you think it's the app, like, do you feel like the app is fucking up? And then a voice comes on and it's Jay saying, "Listen, motherfucker, you're the problem." And here's why.
I don't think that would go over well.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul. I just need to say.
Sorry, what I wanted to kind of to build on that as well is like, whenever we look at objective versus subjective metrics, because that's something that we get asked a lot. It's like, why didn't we include these objective metrics? And to be completely honest, it's because we don't necessarily have the most faith in them. So we look at HRV. So number one, HRV is a lagging metric. So your performance, quote unquote, is already going to be dipped by the time your HRV shows that it's down. Then you look at, is it really HRV? No, it's not, because it's on your wrist and not on your chest. So then there's a lag there. And we know that HRV and pulse rate are not the same. We look at these sleep trackers. We know that, like measuring orthosomnic rhythms in a hospital is going to be way different results than measuring it on a Fitbit. So the reliability of the information being given to you and the reliability of the information that's being used to make these large-scale decisions is inaccurate. And when you wake up in the morning and you feel not rested, what's more important, the fact that your HRV is a good score, or that you feel unrested? In our opinion, it's that you feel unrested and you need to look and see why. Not that you take this number at face value, accept it and move on. Because as Jay mentioned, how do you move forward from that? If I just accept it at face value, there's no more introspection, there's no more question asking, there's no more learning and education. I'm not going to get any positive change long term. It's just that dopamine rush of, hey, I did well, my HRV is good.
Well,
me personally, that's one of the things that I dropped off of doing HRVs because it didn't make any difference in my day. Like I was measuring it every morning and it said I had a shitty score. I was like, I don't care. I'm still going to go lift hard. Like I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And so at some point it was like, okay, I'm spending 2 minutes in the morning trying to sit still and not drink my coffee right when I wake up. And to me, I was just not worth the squeeze.
Well, the one cool thing is I track HRV, and just because I like to have the metrics, but like I don't let it dictate things. But it was cool with the Metrilife, kind of the days I was feeling shitty, like my HRV would kind of correlate with that, but it also correlate with some of the questions. So it would ask like, do you like, for example, like, do you feel like you want to have sex today? I was like, fuck no. I'm like stressed already. I just woke up. But it was kind of cool to see it. But that being said, like it's just information. And like then it makes you ask the questions. Like that's why I like yours, because yours, the HRV can be correlate with how you're feeling, whatever. You can feel like shit. But then the questioning led me to be like, this is possibly why. And then it would have the red flags. And that was more helpful than the score, because the score is like, again, how accurate is it? How do you know? I know I feel like shit, but then at what point without that app, I'm not saying you can't ask those questions without the app, but the app like made it a lot simpler to be like, oh, I should be asking these questions. And then what's the fix for that question? If it's that one that's kind of pinpointed as, I guess, the red flag. So you know what I mean? Like it was just helpful to be more pinpointed in the mental health aspect on the things that are affecting it, which I wouldn't have thought about before. I would have grouped it as I just have a bad day. But like, what the fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, I know. That's why we made it. How do we wrap this up, Paul? Do we cover everything we wanted to? Because I know we covered the nocebo, we covered the autoregulation. Is there anything that we want to like give strength coaches that you think will be helpful around this topic?
I'm really big on just like the big premise of everything we've talked about is the question why, right? So it's seeking a deeper understanding of the things that we're experiencing, how we internalize them, and in turn, how our body responds to them. And looking at it in terms of, it's not our mind on one side, in one silo, and our body in the other, but understanding the interlinks between them and how those correlate with the outcomes that we're experiencing. So people always ask me like, oh, how do I know this app is good? Number one, because I'm not an idiot. And number two, because I've used it myself through some really challenging times in my own life. And it's kind of weird that I would say, I've done I put out this product and it's great, but I put out this product and I think it's awesome because I've actually helped improve my own life by using it. So like I can speak to the power of how transformative this greater understanding can be. One thing I think we should talk about, and it bears mentioning, is the addition of the journaling that we did. So something that gets talked about a lot with mostly mental health practices is journaling. Just getting your thoughts out on paper, but journaling in a passive sense, like talking about your day and how you're feeling, is great. But journaling can actually be quite transformative when it has direction, or as Jay likes to say, like it's conscious journaling. And the addition of his Sisyphus smiling stems journaling, I think added a completely different dynamic to the app, because I want to open my app just so I can do his stems journaling in it, because it sets the tone for the day. It's pretty cool. So I think giving Jay an opportunity to speak about that is great.
Well, and before Jay goes on, I had a personal experience where it's kind of similar to yours. We were in Costa Rica for Ben's thing, but one of the most impactful thing of the whole thing, like we were learning about strength and conditioning with presenters for 2 weeks, was the writing prompts every morning, because like it gave you a question to think about, and you had a time limit, and you just had to write. So you didn't have time to create this perfect answer. You just had to write, and it was like really interesting to kind of see how your thoughts come out. When it's someone else asking this external question and you have to think about it, and it just comes out kind of naturally, as opposed to this like highlight reel writing Instagram post. And I thought that was really powerful. So I'm actually interested to see, Jay, like why.
Yeah, the book was kind of like, so my main passion is studying philosophy, and I find that no matter how clear and concise and logically driven everything you say is, when you present it to people just aren't always ready to hear it, as we said at the beginning of this podcast. So I was kind of like, you know what, like so many people look at all this journaling, and all there really is gratitude journaling that's really popular. And I ordered a couple to look at them, and it's like 120 pages of I am grateful today for 1, 2, 3. I am grateful today for 1, 2, 3. It's like, yes, I think gratitude journaling is very powerful, but this is all that people are getting as their one-stop answer. And knowing that people aren't thinking about all of the things that they need to think about, you know, I thought I would share some of the things that I think are very important for people to get their minds on. So I created these prompts, and the prompts are all based off of like self-responsibility, self-accountability, being more aware of your thoughts, your feelings, other people's thoughts and feelings, just being aware of everything and the effect that you can have on it, how you can control certain things. So for example, some of the questions or some of the prompts might be something like, people who make excuses tend to. So finish that sentence a few times in your head, and I guarantee you're not going to say people who make excuses tend to be fucking awesome. People who make excuses rock. It's going to be people who make excuses tend to achieve a lot less. People who make excuses tend to blame others a lot. People who make excuses tend to be entitled. People who make excuses tend to be a little bit more narcissistic, blah, 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 blah. And then you might ask yourself a question like, you know, when I make excuses, so then you just said all these things. Well, when I make excuses, I let myself down. I make it seem as if I'm blaming others. I'm not taking responsibility for my own actions, blah, 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 blah. So just answering this forced the person to recognize these two thoughts. Because a lot of the time throughout our day, we might subconsciously revert to blaming someone or making an excuse. So hopefully that one just kind of ramped up a little bit of self-accountability in that person's life. And maybe for the four of us, we are already 4 highly self-accountable people. So it's fine, right? It's fine. We don't need it, but maybe someone else needs it. For me, I had one, which was living enthusiastically to me means, because I'm a very flatline person. I'm very emotionless a lot of the time. I have a resting bitch face. People always think I'm pissed off. So, you know, living more enthusiastically to me means, you know, sitting up a little bit straighter, walking with a little bit more pep in my step, paying attention to my posture, speaking a little bit louder, having a little bit more eye contact, using my arms or my hands a little bit more when I talk, asking an extra question after I ask someone how their day is going, right? It's just always that like little bit more. And then you might ask yourself, the next prompt might be, if I were to live with 5% less enthusiasm, oh, people might think I'm not interested. I will become a less effective coach. I'll become a less effective salesperson. My relationships will suffer. My career will suffer. And then if the next one I say, you know, if I were to live 5% more enthusiastically, oh, people will like me more. I'll have more energy, or I'll at least seem like I have more energy. You know, I will seem healthier and more vibrant. I'll be a better coach, career, blah, 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 blah. All these things will be better. So you just spent 2 minutes on each of those, 6 minutes of your life, and you're sitting at this and you have to reflect on it. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, you dumb fuck. Like, you stupid fuck. All you have to do is be just a little bit more enthusiastic. A little bit. I'm not asking you to be fucking fake and, hey, what's going on, man? Like, no, we don't have to be like that. Just 5% more. And 5% more every day is going to make you that little bit better, right? So since I did that, and even right now talking about that, I've probably become more enthusiastic, right? So, and you guys too, like maybe inside, you guys kind of felt what I was saying. It's like, yeah, he's right. Like if I put a little bit more enthusiasm into my life, just a little bit, you know, a realistic amount, my life will get better. So that's like my aha kind of stems, and everyone's going to have different stems. I had one person who was, he was always arguing with his wife. They were fighting a lot. And this was when I did I did an email testing before I put the book out. And the stem that I sent them that day was, when I take 100% responsibility for my relationship. And this guy was fighting with his wife all the time. So he emails me a few days later and he says, I took 100% responsibility for my relationship. I really paid attention to how I communicated with her, and we stopped fighting. Right? And he's like, we're great right now. Like, we had a breakthrough. And I was like, wow, like, that's wicked. Like, that felt good for me. Like, when he sent me that message, I was like, fucking awesome. Like, that's exactly what I want. So that is what the book is aimed at. It's aimed at helping people find intent on things that they wouldn't normally look at. It's the same thing with the app. People don't normally look at these things. We're too fucking lazy, and we have so much technology in front of us, and we'd rather look at something on Instagram for 20 minutes than take 2 of those minutes to input some metrics in an app. And it's pretty depressing sometimes, but these are tools for that.
It's funny, you
That
take
energy way
100%,
back down again there with the
100%
depressing.
responsibility for my relationship.
What did you say?
I got divorced.
Yeah. You could have fucked that up, Jay. We crossed it. It was good. But
What's that?
I said, thank God it worked. Could you imagine if he's like, I got divorced, Jay? Then there would be no book. Paul said that, actually. I'm paraphrasing what Paul said. So don't get mad at me. Jeff, you had something to say there. I don't know. I kind of cut you.
I said he went with the 5% more energy. We're all up. And then at the end, it was like, all right. And this is all depressing because people just suck. And I was like, oh, wow, I want that energy.
Well, I actually like that. Like, I think like,
no, but I honestly, that whole idea of having the two dichotomies and expressing them in a way that is objective and not subjective to start off, so that you're just identifying how you view something, and then taking that and then turning it around and making it internal is a really effective methodology, because it's not about you until it is. And then you go, oh shit, okay, like this does apply. I have to now be honest with myself about how I view myself if this is how I actually feel. And it's like you said, it's a simple thing, but god damn, that's effective.
Well, and it's individual to the person. Like that's the coach saying like, yeah, you should be 5% more energetic because it'll do these things. That's me biasing it. But if they come up with their own solutions, like I said, they know their shit better than we know it. Even if we think we can affect all these changes, at the end of the day, it's going to come from them and their solutions to whatever prompt comes up. And that's what I really like about that, because like you said, it just makes them think about things, but it also makes them give an answer that is their answer for that person in their context, as opposed to as a coach trying to figure that out. Because like we're way worse at it than we think.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, when Paul and I talk about it, we talk about tools. We're giving people tools. We're not giving people the answers. Or like Paul likes to talk about, you know, the GPS, right? We're giving people a GPS. We're not driving people there. We're not chauffeurs. We're not here. Take my hand. I will guide you to a better life. No. We're just helping you kind of introspect, look at your own life, look at yourself in the mirror. You have to be truthful, and then from there we can make better adjustments. And that's really just like when we say we want to help people, it's really we want to help people help themselves.
That's sick. I think we should end there. Otherwise, we'll get too crazy. I actually just want I want a whole podcast on Jay just going through his prompts and his answers to it, because it was the stories are all like really powerful. To be frank, like that's kind of that's what I wanted out of it, is like you could explain it, but when you tell that story, you
Just buy the fucking book, Dean.
Well,
Buy the book, you dick.
Bitch on air. Where do people find you? And we can start with Paul, but like, where's the best way to find you? Where's the best place to find information about the app, and kind of what do you got going on that you want people to know about?
Sure. So the app is www.metrilife.com. It's also available in both app stores. On Instagram, it's at Metrilife, METRILIFE_. You can find me on Instagram at Paul Oneid. Right now, for me, it's focusing on Metrilife. I just moved across the country back home, so settling in here, and yeah, still training, still thinking about competing again. I'm healthy for the first time in a long time, so that's kind of fun.
Deadlifts look good. Your deadlifts have been looking really good. My goal is to beat.
I finally learned how. It just took me 15 years.
Ooh, yeah. What was the game changer? Because they actually look like super easy, to be honest. And usually you always make things look hard with the deadlift. I don't know what you do. No, he does. That's the truth. You make deadlifts look hard, but like now they look easy.
I learned.
It's a funny thing to say.
I actually learned how to kind of dissociate my spinal position between my thoracic position and my lumbar position, because I used to try and kind of get into some like a bit more global extension, and as I initiated off the floor, I would just lose it all. And whereas now I kind of lock in a bit of thoracic flexion, I'm able to keep my lumbar position and use like my legs are very strong, obviously, with an 800 squat. So I'm now able to use the legs without losing energy through the torso. So that's been big.
That's sweet. Jay, did you learn how to deadlift too?
I've actually forgotten how to deadlift. I'm going the other way. I haven't deadlifted in a while. I've been letting I have some really bad hip and back issues that I've been pushing through for years as a power lifter, so I decided to try to let them go. So I'm mastering the Peterson step up, the single leg Romanian deadlift. I'm becoming very proficient at those. Highly recommend them. They're very intense.
Yeah, the Peterson
step up is no joke.
Yeah. Especially if you do it right. Like
but,
so where do people find
they actually are surprisingly.
They're what?
Like they actually surprisingly light my hips up incredibly, and then when I go to do some jumping or any other kind of body weight or lower body driven movement, I actually feel a lot more primed from doing Petersons, which is I find funny.
What do you got going on, and where do people find you outside of the Metrolife stuff?
So just Jayneezy 2100. That's JAYNEEZY 2100. I should probably change that.
I think it's
that's my Instagram. And just Metrilife. The book's on Amazon, Systems Journaling, or Sisyphus is Smiling, Stems Journaling. And yeah, just download the app and follow the Metrilife site. We got a great blog on there. We're posting stuff a couple times a week from numerous contributors.
And the app's free. The app is a free version. The core functionality of Metrilife is free. We initiated that because of as a response to coronavirus and the financial hardships that people are going through. And then you can upgrade to a premium version, which has some additional features as well.
Nice. Well, thanks guys for coming out. Like I said,
Sweet.
Jeb and I will bring people on that are kind of within our network, but Paul's always been a big influence on my life. And kind of as you've been doing this, you've been talking with me over the years, and like I just want to put you guys in front of people because I do think it's important, especially from the strength conditioning realm. Not to say it's not important for everyone, but like in my neck of the woods, I think that this is a very underserved market in terms of the stuff we talked about, because they don't think about that. Jeb and I have to think about it because we deal with nutrition one-on-one clients, and we have to use that in our coaching practice. But these types of things are super effective for whatever you're coaching, and even just to offload some of that in an effective manner that's free at this point, but you know what, that's helping people with a good mission. And so yeah, like thanks guys for coming out.
I tell you, I think about this stuff all the time, but I'm looking just kind of right here. I'm psyched to get into this thing and mess around with it because I really like the idea of being able to kind of, instead of just thinking about them, actually tracking these things down and keeping track of it, because I think it's really sweet. So I'll get back with you guys in a couple weeks and let you know what I think. But it looks awesome.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger.